Canja de Galinha, a Portuguese chicken soup, you only need a few ingredients. 1, you need some chopped onion. I have 2 on the smaller side chopped yellow onions. You will need some chicken broth, but not just chicken broth, because you're also going to use some water and bouillon cubes to make the base of the broth. You will need some lemon juice. You can choose to use fresh, but again, I choose to take a few shortcuts for time. I am using concentrated lemon juice and I am a fan of it. So again, you will also need parsley. You can use fresh. I just ran out of fresh because I made something else today. Coarse ground salt. I am using 2 decent sized chicken breasts that I have chopped after having pared away some of the fat. I will also be using some celery flakes, some white pepper. I have here 3 egg yolks, as I mentioned, a few bouillon cubes, and lastly, some very finely chopped celery. That's all you need to make Canja de Galinha. That's all you need for the Portuguese chicken soup, outside of the rice, which only gets added at the end. I'm at the stove now, where I am about to start putting together my Canja de Galinha, or chicken soup. And the first thing I did was I realized I had a little bit of old soup stock, real soup stock, which I very rarely make. It just has to be a byproduct of whatever I'm doing. So I kind of threw it in here. I didn't want it to go to waste, but you can certainly do what I typically do, which is start with about 48 ounces of chicken broth. Any chicken broth, obviously. If you have your own stock, or if you enjoy making your own stock, a byproduct of making chicken, or if you just make it ahead and freeze it, use your own stock. But let's be honest, and let's make it easy on ourselves. This stuff works just fine. Next up, I am adding the onion to the broth. Get that all in there. All this. Make sure you chop your onion into, really diced pieces. You don't want big hunks of onion when you're making this kind of light soup, and this onion will get very, very, very soft and nearly dissolve if you have it really small enough. And put that right in there with the broth. So I have the chicken broth with the onion here in the pot, and I am stirring it, and it is on medium heat. Next thing I will add is going to be my chopped celery. I just realized I don't know what the word is for celery in Portuguese, and I think I've asked myself that 1,000 times, but I always forget to look it up. I'm going to have to look it up. Obviously, onion, cebola, chicken broth, caldo de galinha que a gente pode comprar já feito numa lata ou num pacote. A gente também pode usar o caldo de galinha que a gente faz em casa por si. But that's basically what I've got in here, and you just kind of let that go for a bit. Next thing I'm going to do is add a touch of sea salt. Not a lot. You can always salt later, after you've done a few other things. I'm adding some celery flake. Isto é a folha da celery. Celery, não sei como se diz em português. Then this is parsley. This is dried parsley. I love fresh parsley, but I made another dish today that kind of used up all the parsley I had from the garden. This stuff works fine, and it will be perfect in this soup. And in my soup, I like my soup to be light. I prefer ground white pepper, pimenta branca. This is a very lightly seasoned soup. So a little white pepper. You will have to do a final taste test at the end, especially after you add in the final ingredient, which is the rice. And then you can taste your broth and see that it has, all the aromatics that you're interested in. So just to recap, celery flake, ground white pepper, parsley flakes, some coarse ground sea salt, to the onions and chopped celery and chicken broth. And you're going to let this go for a few minutes. Next up, I'm going to put in the chicken. Hey, so this is on low heat right now, and I'm about to add the cubed, cleaned, I did take a lot of the fat out of it, chicken into the pot of the broth with the seasonings. I do like my chicken bite-sized, and you know, put in the chicken the way you like. You can also do the chicken or add the chicken from making chicken stock. You can do whatever you like. The important part about canja is that you do want it to stay simple and light. And the way I like it, I really like it to be light, but also have a slight lemon tang to it and a little bit of that white pepper. But you want the broth to be light, and I'll show you how you do that at the end. So right now you can see I have the chicken with the onion and celery and the broth. And before that starts cooking away and getting too concentrated, I do want to add more broth to this pot. So what I am going to do is add 3 of the small chicken bouillons. You don't need to add more. I know that when people normally drink broth, they normally drink broth and it's like 1 bouillon per cup. No, and it's salty. So that's why you don't want to salt too much. Now I'm adding some hot water to this pot with the bouillon. And remember, the chicken is in there now, so it will become chickeny even though I am adding water. I added about, I think this is a 10 cup pot. So now I have enough broth pretty much for the entire soup with the chicken. It doesn't take an awful long time for this to cook. The essence of the chicken with the broth, with the onion, with the celery is going to really, along with the parsley and seasonings, begin to make a very, very flavorful broth that we'll then use as the base for our canja before we add the rice. And then of course that very last step around the rice that does involve bringing in some egg yolks and a little bit of lemon juice. So as soon as this is ready, I'm going to actually cover it, and as soon as we are ready, we will get to that step. Okay. You can see this is simmering away on low, but it will simmer for a while, probably anywhere from 25 minutes to 35 or 40 minutes. You want to make sure the celery and the onion are soft, and you want to also taste the broth so you can see if it's soft or if it still has some crunch to it. You don't want it to have any crunch to it. This smells very good. Usually at around this time and before I add in the rice, I do check for a tasting of the broth. And this one I did taste. I added a spray of salt and a few, I'd say maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon of some white ground pepper. I happen to like things that are on the peppery, zingy front, so the white pepper and definitely the salt. You can tell if you taste this soup. If it tastes flat, then you need a little salt. The salt will bring out the other flavors, so that's really what you're doing with the salt. You don't want it too salty. You can always add salt later, but if it tastes flat right now, you do want to pinch. Okay, this needs about another minute or 2, or maybe 5, very, very close, and I will be adding the rice soon. So this has been going for a while. It's definitely cooked to the point where the onion and the celery are soft. I'm going to be adding some rice. Now, this is when your preference is whatever your preference is. A lot of Portuguese people use that river rice. I've used it. It's the one that plumps up quite a bit. You do want the rice to get soft in here, and you don't like, or at least I don't like, the rice to be the one that plumps up so huge that it's just too ricey. So even though most people would tell you never to do this, I have used minute rice. I have used other long grain rices. I've used whatever rice I've had around the house, and it still comes out fabulous. So I'm going to be adding about a cup of rice. And I have these little packages that come already prepared and ready. This happens to be a long grain rice. I have used jasmine rice before, I have used basmati rice before. I love those aromatic rices. I think they work well. And if you buy, this is going to need a little more than just that rice, though. I can already tell this is a huge batch. And I don't want it not to have rice in every spoonful. Although I do see it. You can't really tell until it starts to cook, but then you'll have that uneven kind of half cooked and all cooked. So I'm going to let this go for a little bit. Lift it up and make sure you see some rice in every spoonful. You can kind of tell when you do it that way whether or not you need a little bit more rice. You definitely don't want it to turn into a paella. You want it to be a soup, but you want to have enough rice to make it look soupy. So you may need a little more rice. You may choose to use less if you like more broth than rice, but I will kind of leave that up to you. And I may add a little bit more rice, but as soon as I get that rice ratio down, I will show you what we do next. Okay, so this is simmering away. Turns out, because I was using a long grain enriched rice, one of those like minute rice type things, it's not going to get all big and puffy. So I did add about a full cup, maybe a cup and maybe a little more. You can see it looks like that, but it's not going to get big. It's not going to get puffy. It's not like the river rice. It only gets to a certain size. You can see that it is ricey, but it's more brothy than ricey. So the rice cooks to a certain puffiness, or only absorbs so much liquid as it has here, and it will simmer away nicely, and it won't continue to thicken and thicken and thicken and make the soup very, very pasty. Although, don't be afraid. Again, if something seems off balance-wise from the broth rice ratio, add a little more broth or add a little water. You can certainly keep doing that. Now, as the rice is cooking away, the last thing you really do is you get your egg yolks. I have 3 egg yolks here. I've beaten those egg yolks. And I do like to add a little bit of the broth to the egg yolk. And to the egg yolk, I like to add my lemon. You can use fresh lemon. I am using about maybe 3 tablespoons. I like things lemon forward. About 3 tablespoons. Your mileage may vary, maybe 2. Certainly 3 is a good amount for me, and I end up probably adding even more lemon once it's on my plate. So I do things a little bit more lemony because it's my preference. I am mixing the lemon with the yolk. And before I pour it in there, I'm going to add a little of this broth just to make sure that it's just not pure yolk. Stir it around a little, take it out, let it cool for a bit. You can blow on it if you want to. If it were egg whites, you wouldn't do it like this. You would probably just add it straight away. But I'm just mixing a little bit in there because it's the yolk. You have time. Mix, 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 mix. So it's the lemon juice, the yolk, with maybe a couple tablespoons of the actual soup broth. Stir up your broth like that. And now pour it in. Pour it in. Keep stirring. Pour it in. Keep stirring. You can see it's getting that famous Portuguese canja cloudiness. Pour it in. Keep stirring. Pour it in. Keep stirring. Keep stirring. It's getting that cloudy, yellowish. This is the color that you're used to seeing the Portuguese chicken soup, Canja de Galinha, or Canja de Galinha. Now, some people like carrots, feel free. You can actually use the same base and make a chicken vegetable soup. If you're just going with the rice and you're just going with the chicken and you're making it quite simple and plain like this, that's where the word canja comes from, as opposed to sopa de galinha, which is chicken soup. So a chicken soup can be chicken with vegetables, chicken with potatoes, chicken with anything. Canja is typically a little lighter, more just chicken and rice. I don't know if the other chicken soups would ever need the yolk or anything else, but this I'm going to simmer now for a little bit more time. Smells heavenly. You do want to do a final taste test before you serve this to make sure you really adjust it. Because once the rice soaks up that liquid, once the egg is in there, you want to make sure that your base salt level and that the balance between the salt and the pepper and all the other ingredients is where it needs to be. You also want to make sure that the rice is soft and that you have, as I mentioned before, no crunch left to any of the onion or celery. This will be ready to plate soon. It is done. Look at this. I did the final taste test, and for my taste buds, I added a little more lemon juice. I also added a little more white pepper. I added some cracked black pepper and a spray of salt, which you can really only judge the salt level after the rice. My rice is cooked, everything is cooked. Let me show you what this looks like when you take it and get ready to serve yourself a bowl. Look at it. This is Portuguese chicken soup, or close to a Portuguese inspired. Canja de Galinha, a moda de Nidia, a moda americana. So this is what I just called chicken soup, canja, my style. Take it what you will. Try this recipe out. Let me know what you think. Very quick, very easy. I think it's very delicious. So thank you so much for watching. And thank you for watching Dwayne and Nidia Food, Fun and Travel, and we'll be back soon with another video. Thank you. Please subscribe and like if you enjoy these videos. Thanks.